Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Bennegadi, and I am the co-founder and CEO of the ArtBound Initiative program. What ArtBound Initiative is that we're a global career accelerator for students and fresh grads who are trying to, sorry, let me mute someone, who are trying to get into the creative industries. We're offering a program that, has courses, also places students and fresh grads in internships. And then we also offer a lot of community events, and content just like that to help, students get into the industry. So it's in this capacity today that I want us to talk a little bit more about how to craft a standout resume. I think it's the $1 million question here, right? You all are, hi Imogen, sorry, I'm saying hi to one of our participants. So how to, craft a standout resume, I think is the $1 million question, specifically when you are just starting your career, right? And you're trying to find internships, to find jobs, and you're kind of in a sea of applicants, right? So we're going to think about how to basically try to stand out, from the crowd. And the reason why, of course, I'm going to be giving you a little bit of advice. I do want to put a disclaimer here. I am not a resume writer, okay? But I have placed over 1,000 interns in internships over the past 8 years. So I have a lot of experience in terms of what works, what doesn't. So just a little bit about me. I am originally from Paris, from France. That's the accent that you all are hearing. And I graduated from a master's in international strategic management, which are all, I guess, very nice words to say business. And I started my career in advertising in a big agency in Paris. And then I moved to New York. That's why I was happy to see New York was also in the room. So I moved to New York because I always wanted to be in NYC and always wanted to start my career there. And although I studied business, I fell into the theater industry and just randomly started working on Broadway and off-Broadway shows as a producer. And I actually did that for for a while until I decided that I wanted to do my own thing, and that's when I co-launched ArtBound Initiative, which is a global internship program. I think it was very related to me coming from Paris, France, to New York City in the U.S. It was very difficult to do that jump, and I wanted to create a program that would help also students and fresh grads to do those types of jumps, and to be able to go places without necessarily having networks or having visas and all of that. So that's a little bit about me. So today, as I mentioned, I'm going to give you a little bit of my expertise in terms of what I've seen has worked for my participants in the past. As I mentioned, I've placed about 1,000 of them in internships. That said, this is my opinion, okay? Disclaimer. So my opinion does not mean the absolute truth. So you all do you take what you want to take, and hopefully you learn a couple things out of this workshop. Um, After the workshop, I will introduce, I will take 5 minutes to introduce what the ArtBound Initiative program is. And then after that, we'll go through a Q&A. I want to have your questions, you all. I want you all to ask me a lot of questions about resumes, about careers, because we're here for that, okay? So let's talk a bit about what we're going to cover in this workshop agenda. First off, we're going to talk about how to catch a recruiter's attention and make your resume stand out. When you apply to jobs, there's probably, let's say, 300 other people who are applying. How do you basically stand out, right? That's the question. We're going to go through a couple key resume sections, just to kind of I'll show you an example of one of our participants' resume as well, so you all can see how it should look like. We're going to think about how to build a strong resume, even with limited experience, because that's always a problem, right? It's like my participants are always asking me hey, Laura, this is great, but I've got no experience. What do I do? So we're going to talk about that, of course. And then I do want to mention AI a little bit, because I know you all use ChatGPT a lot. I'm also guilty of it. I use it every day. But how to best use it, because, there's definitely do's and don'ts. So let's go through just a short intro. I want to let you know a number that's a bit crazy, but that's real. There's been a lot of studies on that. So recruiters, just to let you know, spend in average 7 seconds reviewing a resume. 7 seconds. I mean, that is insanely short. So you really want to make sure that you're coming in, with a very, very strong impression, so that in those 7 seconds, they're skimming through your content and being okay, no, thank you, or moving on to the next, right? So I want us to to kind of dive a little bit into some tips to help you craft a resume that in 7 seconds somehow will make an impression. So first off, how to make your resume stand out. The first thing that I want to mention is that the latest trends now, and we've talked, although I'm not a resume writer, I work with resume writers through ArtBound Initiative. So we talk a lot about it. And the latest trends for the resume writers that they're telling us is that now, if you're a student or a fresh grad, you can actually skip that profile section. You know, that little top section where it says like student from UNC Chapel Hill graduating from X, Y, and Z. You can skip that now if you want, so that you can optimize more space for other types of experiences. So that's number one. Number two, I want you to really focus, of course, on including any relevant experience. Let's say you are trying to go for a communications internship. Do you have any volunteer work that you've done where you could kind of say that you've worked on social media posts or communication work? Have you ever done any school projects, for example? Like, do you have a Com 101 class, for example, where you were asked to make a case study, a communication case study, let's say on Zara? Can you include that as a school project? Do you have any part-time jobs somehow that might align with the internship? It might be that you're actually working in a call center, for example, and like obviously you can capitalize on that, trying to make sure that you're showcasing very much relatable skills, right? So list out anything that you feel like could be somehow relevant to your experience. And I want you to highlight, of course, all the responsibilities, the achievements, and making sure that you're utilizing action verbs. You always want to start your bullet points on a resume with action verbs, coordinated, led a team of X, drafted social media posts. It always has to start with an action verb. And as much as possible, I want you to quantify your accomplishments. So let's say you were a volunteer at a student club and you organized events. I want to make sure that you don't say just organized events. No, organized 3 like annual events which resulted into 150 attendees. Give us numbers, of course, if they look cool. Like, don't tell us I created a social media post that resulted in 3 followers or 3 likes, but give us as much as you can quantities, and accomplishments. That's important. Number 3, that's a question that a lot of people ask me and a lot of my participants ask me, is like, hey, I've got 0 experience in the industry, but I worked in hospitality, or I worked in food and beverage, I worked in retail. So that's amazing. And you all should make sure to use it. I think it's a really bad advice. Some people say don't include non-relevant experience in your resume, but when you are at the beginning and you don't have much to show, definitely include non-relevant experience, but make it and transform it so that it feels transferable. So for example, if you've ever worked in hospitality, let's say, right, you were working as a waiter in a restaurant and you want to target a communication internships or a project management internship, amazing. You already have really important skills for it. What do you have? You've learned customer service, you've learned to communicate with clients, you've probably learned problem solving, like in restaurants you're troubleshooting every 5 seconds. That's really important. So you've learned how to troubleshoot problems. You might have learned how to do inventory management. You might have learned how to pick up the phone as well to take reservations. So think through all the things that you've done in your non-relevant experience and try to transform them with, to kind of like make it relate in some ways to some of the skill sets that you would need for that communication internship or that, project management internship, for example. And I can tell you right now that employers really value that. They really value when you're showcasing adaptability, like that you've done previous works like that. So that's definitely going to be a plus. Okay. So that's number 3. Number 4, and that I think is one of the most, I guess, important points in what I'm saying, is I want you all to think about the concept of keywords. You know how you've probably heard about like search engine optimization, like Google, you know how you have keywords on websites. It's the same thing for resumes. Recruiters, when they hire for a job, they have a job description. And in that job description, there's keywords that are really important to them. And they look for those exact keywords in the resumes that they're hiring. And sometimes it's not even them who are hiring. Sometimes if you apply for big companies, it's not even them, it's softwares that are literally going to crawl for keywords in your resume. So keywords are super, super important. My biggest advice to you is whenever you're applying and you're putting together a resume, is to look at the job descriptions that you're applying for. Communication internships, and I keep saying communications, okay, it's just as an example, but communication internships will have a lot of, you know, similar keywords, right? It might be creating newsletters, it might be like drafting social media posts, it might be putting together press releases, it might be, you will have some important keywords in those types of job desks. I call them job desks in short for job descriptions. And I want you to understand which are those, and I want you to figure out a way to input them into your resume in some ways. So if you were if you were in a student club, let's say, um, you know, why don't you just say, and you organize events, like you could just say like, organize like three annual events that resulted into 250 attendees, drafted, newsletters and created blog posts for X, Y, and Z. So you take a look at what they want to see and you somehow input it a little bit. One resume experience can be said in 15 different ways, right? So you want to adapt to those job descriptions. So highlighting relevant keywords is super, super key. Now, number 5, of course, you have to keep it concise and clear, okay? You aim for one page. I know we've got some Australians out here on this call as well, and I know that, for example, in the US, it's a one-pager. Like you have a one-page resume, unless you have 15 years of experience, and if so, you can have a two-pager resume, but otherwise you've got one. I know in Australia, it's a little bit more common for students to have a couple pages or sometimes 3 pages, but I will say less is more. Honestly, when you're a student, you don't have 3 pages worth of things that you want to really actually put. So keep it concise. One page, clear formatting. Don't go crazy on the design. I mean, obviously, if you're a designer or creative, like you can kind of have a bit of your brand, but otherwise keep it clean. There's a lot of great resources and free templates that you can find. I personally like resume.io. It's not free. It's like maybe a couple bucks to make your resume, but they have really nice and clean kind of templates, which I like. So you all can find really good templates to use, okay? And then the final thing, obviously, is proofread, and I will say it one last time, proofread. If I catch a typo in a resume, you're out. That is number one. Even when I recruit for ArtBound Initiative, for example, when I look for my program advisors or my admissions team and I do recruitment, like if there's a typo in a resume, but there's no way I'm getting that person in an interview. Because if you weren't even capable to make sure that your resume is flawless, then what does that tell about your work ethic? So it's super important that you like literally come through your CV and your resume and really just triple check everything, the grammar, the spell checks, the links, whatever there is, like you have to make sure that it's absolutely flawless. You triple check it. You give it to a friend. Hey, read it again for me. You give it to another friend. Read it again for me. Whatever needs to happen, but just make sure that it's like bulletproof, okay? So that's the first part. How to make, those are a couple things for you to kind of keep in mind on how to make that resume stand out. Now let's go through the important resume sections. And I'm actually going to get out of my full screen right now, and I'm going to show you a resume of one of our participants to give you a bit of an example. But there's I guess 4 kind of key sections that you can bring. Obviously, your contact info, right? Name, phone, email, location. Your LinkedIn profile is important to put in there. Your portfolio link, of course, if you're a creative person. Then you want to go directly to your work experience as much as possible. You can put the education section on the top if you really have zero related work experience. But if you have a couple things that kind of look a little bit related, I would always put the work experience first. Work experience should be very clean, title always, company, location, dates, and then, for example, production coordinator, Phone First Productions, New York, January 2023 to January 2025. I should be updating my examples. We're already in 2025, sorry. Then underneath that, you want to put the bullet points, right? Responsibilities, always starting with your action verb, and then you're highlighting those achievements using metrics. Then you've got your education section, right? Your degree, university name. So for example, Bachelor of Fine Arts, BFA, right? Bachelor of Fine Arts in Visual Arts, RMIT 2022. So your graduation date or your expected graduation date. And then you want to put a skill section. And a big mistake that a lot of my participants do, and I'm sure that you might also do in some ways, is in the skills, you don't put soft skills in there, okay? Like, don't put like communications, project management. No, those soft skills, they will be inputted into your descriptions of your jobs and your work experiences. In the skills section, it's only hard skills, only tech skills. Do you have softwares? Do you have languages, for example? Language is a good thing to add, but don't add soft skills in there. So it's only like, for example, Adobe Creative Suite, Final Cut Pro, if you want to put like Canva, things like that, okay? So let me show you just one example. I'm gonna get out of this and I want to show you here the example of Stefano, one of our participants. So I like this resume as an example because I think it's clean and it's to the point. So you can see here, Stefano's name, his contact info, he's got his links, right? So right away I can click on his LinkedIn and his portfolio. And if I click there, it redirects me directly to his portfolio, which is, a film portfolio, right? So that's a really good place to put if you are creative. Then you've got the work experience. He leads with that, right? So writer, producer, and director, that's the company or the place that he did the work, right? National Film Academy of Bologna, the city. And then you can see here the bullet points. So everything is, action verbs driven and, clear. And also there's some numbers, won the best screenplay award, film festival selected from a pool of 150 participants. So there's numbers in there. It gives us context and it's clean. Okay. So you have the work experience listed, then you've got the education, the master degree, right? He did mention his grade. You can mention a grade if you want. Like if you want to mention your grade or your GPA, that's fine, but only mention it if it's excellent, okay? Like only mention it if it's like really top GPA. Otherwise, just don't mention it. Best not to. I didn't have a good GPA at all when I was in university, as a disclaimer. So nothing wrong, nothing wrong with that. But just don't put your GPA if it's not really good. Education section, and then you can see the skills here. It's only tech skills, right? Excel, Word, Sheets, PowerPoint, Premiere Pro, DaVinci, Story Architect. Those are all the software. He's a film student. And then you've got the languages, Italian and English. Okay, so those are this is a really nice example of a resume. And by the way, this was also done with resume.io. It's done by our team because we use resume.io to design our participants' resume. So I like this. It's clean and it's easy to scroll and there's a lot of good keywords in there. Okay, so that was an example of basically I think good resume to showcase. So keep those sections in mind. Now, let's talk about, I guess, a really important question, because that's always what my participants come up, they always come to me and they ask me like, okay, what to do? I don't have much experience, like how to basically, how to make that happen, right? So I think it's okay not to have a lot of experience, first of all, because you all are students and fresh grads. So why would you have a lot of experience? It's totally normal. And people know about that, but you shouldn't showcase a resume that's like has only one experience, right? That's not possible. So there's a few things that you can do in order to offset that problem. First is, if you don't have any experience, you don't have any non-related experience, you don't have any like related experience, try to think through what you have in university, okay? Start with highlighting some relevant courseworks and projects. I said earlier, maybe you want to do a marketing internship and you took a marketing class where in that marketing class, they made you do a marketing case study about, I don't know, about Nike, let's say, okay? build that on your resume literally as a project, Nike marketing case study, and then give us bullet points about what you did, researched, Nike advertising campaigns from 2024 to 2025 to highlight key results or key, insights on X, Y, and Z. So you kind of like take a project and build it almost as a work experience with like 2 to 3 bullet points about what you've achieved and what you've learned. So at least your employer will be like, okay, they don't have any marketing experience, but they've gone through a marketing case study, so they kind of get it, right? So relevant courseworks and projects is a great way to kind of beef up a little bit your resume if you don't have much. The second part is you should think about, if you don't have much, you should think about creating a strong academic section. So that's where you can put the education number 2, right after your contact info, education, right? If you don't have much work experience. And in there, try to think about anything you can put, like, do you have highlights that you've done, were you part of Dean's List, or, are you on a scholarship, or any awards or any festivals that you've won, any notable achievements, basically think through it. Again, a GPA, if it's a very good GPA, you might want to mention it. You might want to mention even maybe some important courses, that you want to highlight. If you're going to apply for, a marketing internship, maybe you want to tell them that you took marketing and like that you took maybe social media marketing, that you took, project management as a class, like a couple courseworks that you might be able to include. Then after that, I want you to think about any volunteer work, any extracurricular activity. Have you ever been in a student club? If you haven't, by the way, it would be a good thing for you to do. If you don't have much experience, honestly, uh, you know, adding like joining a student club and having a bit of leadership experience is a really great way to go about it. Like at least you have something to kind of put. So, did you ever shadow? Like, I don't know, when you were, when you started uni, like, do you have a friend of a friend who was doing a project and you shadowed them for a couple of weeks? Like, can you put that in there? Like, really think through anything that you can put in there that somehow feels a little bit relevant. And then, as I mentioned as well, emphasizing those transferable skills. Okay. So it means like all your non-relevant experience, you've nannied, you've tutored, you were a bartender, you like were in retail and worked at H&M for the summer. Like really think through those experiences and try to understand how you can tweak them so that it makes you look more qualified, which you are, by the way, because if you've done those jobs, you are qualified in many ways because you've learned like real life skills, right? And you've evolved in a professional environment, which is really good at an internship level. Like that's really valued from employers. So, think through again those transferable skills. And then the last thing that you could do, if there's really nothing much still, like you're like, oh my God, I've looked through everything, try to think about maybe showcasing personal projects. So for example, maybe you've created a blog, or, I guess Tumblr is not a thing for you guys. Maybe that was like my generation, but, you've done a blog, you've done maybe a portfolio, that you've worked, you've done any freelance work. Maybe you like did some, I don't know, logo designs for like your uncle's company or something like that. Like try to think about any personal projects that you might have done that you can be adding in there. So do the work of like really going through each of those sections to see what you can put, list everything out, and then you can curate it. You can trim it down, right? But that's a really great way to go about it when you don't have much experience, is like looking through those 5 key points to see what's possible and what's not. All right. So by the way, keep asking questions. Thank you guys. I'm seeing that there's already some questions here on the chat. So please keep asking them because I'm going to get to all of them at the end. So one thing that I do want to mention is about AI. I'm not trashing on AI. I literally use ChatGPT every day, 15 times a day for like, specifically because I'm a French, I'm not a native English speaker. So I grammar correct, I spell check, I do a bunch of things with ChatGPT. But what you want to be careful about, and what I'm hearing a lot from our recruiters, who we work with, is that they're seeing a surge basically in like AI generated resumes and cover letters, by the way. And they all look very similar to each other, actually, because like, you know, ChatGPT has like ways of structuring things, of writing, of putting like dashes. Like there's little things that ChatGPT does that, like, you know, if you kind of know, you know that it was written through ChatGPT. And even in the cover letter, they write things in a very identical way in terms of the structure. So I literally was talking to this recruiter who like posted an internship, and she told me that she saw, I think, at least 100 applications that looked almost the same, because they were basically AI generated. I mean, you know, primarily generated with AI. So this will disqualify you on the spot. If you do, like, don't even waste your time. If you do that, you're not going to get an interview. There's no way. Okay. So what's important is like, let's use AI, because AI is an incredible tool, but let's use it wisely. So for me, the way you should use AI. And by the way, we'll have a workshop on that. We'll have a workshop about the job search in 2 days, where we'll talk a little bit more about that in specifics. But I want you to use AI to research. You know, AI is a great tool to research. So research the companies that you're applying for, research the job descriptions. You know, for example, you can totally ask ChatGPT, hey, can you take this job description and highlight the keywords, the important keywords from this job description that I should be inputting in my resume? That is a great thing to do. Then it's going to spit out like 10 keywords, and then you can take those keywords and start inputting them into your resume, right? You can also use AI to summarize, you know, what their services are, you know, of the company that you're applying for, what their mission is, you know, hey, this company is doing digital marketing and like SEO optimization. Like, what does SEO optimization means? What are the types of like skills that is required for SEO optimization? So that way you can kind of see like, oh, okay, cool. Like for SEO optimization, you need to be a good writer. You need to understand this and that, so you can start inputting into your resume, right? So use it for research. As I mentioned, highlight the keywords from the job description, right, to kind of include into your resume. And then you can utilize AI to polish grammar. You know, you can send them a sentence and be like, is that grammatically correct? You might want to refine a little bit the tone. Like, you can utilize it to do slight edits, but not to rewrite the entire thing and to rewrite the entire sentence. I think what's important to kind of remember is what not to do for AI is don't spit out your entire resume with AI. You know, don't do that. Like don't put all your descriptions and be like, write this again from scratch, because again, ChatGPT will write it in a way that's going to be quite clear to recruiters. So don't submit anything that's unedited. You know, you can use AI in some ways for sometimes the structure of it if you want, but then you need to rework it. You need to put some personal touch. That's super important. Definitely a no go, and it's a separate subject, but I do want to say, do not use AI for cover letters. It is a mistake. Again, recruiters see it and you'll be disqualified. You might as well take the time to just write it, you know. They again come up always with the same types of structures and the same types of like, you know, the way they use adjectives. There's so many ways to kind of spot what a ChatGPT cover letter is. So do not use it for full cover letters. And also don't rely on it 100%. You know, sometimes I've typed it in ChatGPT, hey, research this company for me, and they gave me something that was wrong. So AI is not always like fully accurate. It can miss the mark. So recoup a little bit your research. So I can answer questions. I'm not an AI specialist for sure, but I can answer some questions about that and like some mistakes, you know, that we might want to avoid. Okay. So in short, and then I'll tell you, you know, just because I don't want to overwhelm you with too much content, and I know there's also some great questions that are coming up, and I do want to introduce briefly also what ArtBound Initiative is. But, you know, I think that if you apply some of those tips, you know, you don't have to apply everything, okay? Again, you do you. But if you apply some of those tips, I think you can really make sure to grab, you know, to really create like a resume that's going to grab attention. You know, in those 7 seconds that the, you know, recruiters are going to look at it, they're going to be like, okay, cool, I'm seeing some keywords, I'm seeing some relevant experience, some non-relevant, but that's, you know, transformed with skills. I'm seeing the right like list of skills, the right type of academic section. So I think, you know, if you try to be a bit strategic and methodical with your resume, you can really create something that stands out. So obviously, you know, good luck as well for putting those together. You know, if you have more questions here, please put them in the chat. And let me tell you a little bit more about ArtBound briefly so that you all understand also what the program is. Maybe some of you have heard it. For my participants who are on this call, apologies, you probably heard it 10 times, so I'll go through it quickly. But basically, what we do is that we connect students and fresh grads with, companies in the creative industries. We offer them courses about how to enter the workforce. Things like that, things like we talked today, we have courses about those types of things, how to put together a resume, how to pitch yourself, how to put together a portfolio, all the things that you need to know. We have different destinations that we offer. Sorry, let me just mute. We have like different basically destinations that we offer in our program. So we have 3 in the US, New York, Chicago, and LA. We've got 2 in, I guess, Europe, if we could call it this way, London and Berlin. We've got 2 in Australia, Melbourne, Sydney, and we also have a remote program. So those are the places that we're in. In terms of the internship types that we offer, we also are basically throughout the entire creative industries, not the entire, but we try to cover as much as we can, but we only do creative fields. Okay, if you're an engineer or if you're in finance, unfortunately, like that's not really kind of, where we're not going to be the best program for you. We have opportunities in entertainment and media. We've got opportunities in marketing and advertising, in the fine arts world, in the fashion world, in the design world. So this is a laundry list basically of all the internships that we offer, but you all can definitely look through our website and see a little bit more if you're interested. In terms of what the program includes, there's 4 key components. The first one is an academy. So it's like online courses that you get on top of your classes that you can do on the side. We also have a guaranteed internship placement. That's the nice perk, is that if you get accepted into our program, we'll place you in an internship. The third part is the access to our creative network of like those 1,000 people who did internships, who are now in the workforce, that you can network with. And then the fourth element is really the support that we offer to our participants. In terms of the academy, basically it's an online course. There's 2 sections. The first one is about preparing your profile and beefing up who you are, learning how to interview, learning how to put together a resume, learning how to put together a portfolio that's really strong, really learning everything you need to know about the recruitment process, right? And that's going to serve you for the internship through ArtBound, but also through the next few years as well for your jobs. And then the second part is really about preparing for your internship and learning from seniors in the industry. What types of tools do you need to master before you intern? What type of challenges you might face? How to basically find jobs after you're done with the internship, and learning from really senior people in the industry. We've got people from Warner Brothers and MTV and Omnicom and Ralph Lauren and like Shutterstock and, big staffing agencies. So all of our industry experts are like senior level, and they're here to guide you through the process. The second part of the program is a guaranteed internship placement, which obviously is nice. So the internships are year-round, fall, spring, summer, and they're ranging from 3 to 6 months, okay? They can be part-time or full-time. They can be also for academic credit. The only thing about the program is that we can't guarantee a paid internship. That's the one thing that we're very transparent about. I wish we could get there one day, but the truth is, with or without us, there's a lot of paid and unpaid internships out there. And, we work a lot with boutique firms as well. So if you are joining this program, you need to be prepared to undertake an unpaid internship, even if it means that you're doing it part-time so that you have a job on the side. And if that's a deal breaker, totally get it, but then it's not the right program for you. That's just one thing that I want to mention. And then we've got a really good conversion of people turning into full-time roles, right? So we've got a lot of we've had some of those big companies as well that we've worked with, in the past, like CBS and Vice and TBWA, but we also have a lot of really cool, smaller boutique firms as well. Examples of Spring Studios in New York, Picture North, a production company in Chicago, for example, Factory PR in Los Angeles, just to give you a little bit of a look and feel of some of our, partners. Raptor, a cool marketing agency in London, a gallery, for example, Somos in Berlin, Collider, a really cool production studio in Sydney, Milkman, a creative agency in Melbourne. So just giving you a few just names of some of the smaller partners that are still doing super cool work, working with really cool clients that you might not know of, or maybe you might. So the last, the support system is that if you want to go overseas, we'll help you with all the visa, the insurance, the housing. We handle basically all the relocation processes. Okay, that's the perk of the program. That's actually why I launched it, because when I relocated from Paris to New York, it was a nightmare. So we're helping on all of those logistics. And then we're also here, throughout the entire process. You have basically program coordinators that are going to help you set up the interviews with the companies, prepare your resume, your portfolio, help with the visa if you're going overseas. And then we have in-city coordinators that are going to organize events and like just do a bunch of stuff so that you build your community through the program. And that takes me to the last point, which to me is the most important, is basically the creative community that you get access to if you join our program. And that's a lifetime kind of access. So you can connect with those 1,000 people that I mentioned we've placed, which are, in good places now and that are already working. We always have events in every city that we have every month. We also send job boards. We do workshops like this, industry talks. We send career resources. We're pretty hands-on. And, the goal for you is to, when you join a network, and same thing for your university, right? I saw a lot of people from UNC Chapel Hill. I saw people from San Jose. So you all have like, great university networks that you should tap into. We also have a great network that you can tap into with people that are at Apple or NBC Universal, CBS, Saatchi and Saatchi, places like Netflix, like Google, TikTok, L'Oreal. So those are people that are from our network that you can kind of connect with and just, hopefully potentially create good connections to get jobs out of it. So if you're interested in applying, you can submit an application form. You will then go to an interview process with our team, and then we'll let you know whether you've been accepted into the program. And if you're accepted, of course, you can make your decision whether you want to join. There's a deadline that's coming up, June 10. So for our Australians out here, I know you all have inverted seasons. So your summer is in November. So if you want to go overseas for the summer, the deadline is June 10 for you, okay? For our US crew, because I see there's a heavy US crew as well, the June 10 deadline will be for fall, okay? For basically, for your fall, which is like September, October internships, okay? So just keep that in mind. So I highly recommend for you all to go to our website, find more information about the program, including the tuition. Of course, there's a tuition for this program, right? So check out also the financials, check out the scholarships as well that we offer. You can understand a little bit better, check out the testimonials, who's done what. So if you are interested before you submit an application, you can, do your research. Really important always. So if you want to check if you're eligible on our website, there's an eligibility form. If you're ready to apply, you can apply. And then I do want to mention before I stop and we go through questions, we'll have a good 20 minutes for that. We have 2 workshops coming up, actually, one tomorrow and one the day after. One is going to be, let me go on the webpage here. You're here today, you all. One is going to be from Kevin Forrester, which is a creative director, basically from Omnicom Group. And he's going to talk about portfolios. So if any of you are creative here, creatives, designers, great workshop to be at because he's amazing and he will give some really great tips. And then we also have another workshop the day after that is basically with Vanessa Dolan. She's a senior recruiter for Aquant. Aquant is probably one of the leading creative staffing agencies. And so she will talk about how to nail the recruitment process, like thinking through LinkedIn, doing job search, utilizing AI for it. So those are great. If you're about to graduate, for example, and you're going to start looking for jobs, like great workshop to come at. Okay. So I'm going to add the link afterwards. And you all can register through it. So, all right, you all. This was a lot of information. I want to get through your questions. There's so many great ones. So I'm just going to go ahead and start reading. Okay. So I have a question from Ning who's saying, hi, Laura, I was wondering if you have any insights on resume formatting requirements for the creative sectors in general. Specifically, how common is the use of application tracking systems, ATS, in the creative sectors in North America? Additionally, do you have any observations or suggestions for actors or performing arts students regarding the preferred resume formatting? Thank you. So that's a great question, Ning. I think there's a lot of them, there's several questions within it. So I will say, in terms of, so I guess my insight for resume formatting is what I provided for you, is the sections that I mentioned, which is the, info section, the work experience, the education, and the skill section. The work experience could be also in relevant it could be subdivided maybe in relevant projects, extracurricular, but in terms of the formatting, I think in the creative fields, what you're talking about, applicant tracking systems is like, recruitment softwares, right? That a lot of the big companies like use. And sometimes it's true that if you don't have the right formatting, they'll kind of like, you'll kind of get ghosted by it. But I will say in the creative fields, a lot of the companies, you have some big companies, Paramount, CBS, Saatchi and Saatchi. You do have some really, really big corporations in there, but you also have a lot of boutique and medium-sized firm that don't necessarily use those types of tracking systems. So I think it's a little bit more forgiving, as opposed to like if you're applying to consulting or finance and banks, like for sure, those guys definitely use that. But I would say still verify that your resume format is, I guess, compatible with those applicant tracking systems. That's easy to kind of like find. I think Resume, for example, again, and by the way, I'm not affiliated with resume.io. I do want to mention that right from the get. But like, I think a lot of those templates, like, for example, are compatible. So just verify that. And then you ask about any observations or suggestions for actors and performing arts students. So yes, I think for actors and performing arts students, of course, you'll have another sections that's going to be like productions, right? Which will be listed like all your appearances and everything. So I think the format is a little bit different. I don't have one right now on the top of my head, but honestly, I would just research to kind of look through like the best, now online you can really look through all of that, like what are the best templates for performing arts. And you could also have a professional resume and then your acting resume that you could submit as well. Because, most of the time when you're going to apply for acting, it's going to be through casting anyway. And if you want to work like in the business side of things, maybe you want to work in like a theater, in cultural management or in film production. If that's the case, I would recommend to use more a professional resume and not focus as much on your acting career, because production companies don't really care about your acting appearances. They're going to care more about the experience that you've had, that is going to be relevant to them. So I think that's just my advice and my opinion again. So let me know if that makes sense. So Annette is asking for scholarships, should we be putting the amount of the scholarship? So I think that's referring, Annette, to the question of when I was talking about the education section, right? I was saying like, hey, beef it up if you can with scholarships, with awards. So honestly, Annette, if the scholarship is significant, for sure put it. If it's like a $10,000 scholarship on this year, like definitely put it. If it's like a $500 scholarship, maybe just say, just say scholarship. So I think it depends on the amount. If it's significant, I would definitely add it. So I have Danilo who's asking, is it necessary to include English in language section on your resume? Of course not, Danilo. If you're American, I mean, if you're in an English speaking country, please don't put English. The example that I showed you here with Stefano, he put Italian and English because he's Italian and his internship was in New York. So it made sense for him to have Italian and English. But if he would have applied to a job in Italy, he would not have put Italian, right? So don't put English if it's your native language. Only put other languages, Spanish, for example, and please put languages that you can actually speak a little bit. Like, don't go ahead and put French and just say like bonjour, like do put languages that you feel a little bit fluent in. So I've got Ina. I hope that answers it, Danilo. I've got Ina who's saying, are there any examples we can look at for that has strong academic section that highlights awards or achievements? Ina, that's a great question. I don't have an example right now, and it would take me too long to like pull it off. But I think that you can probably again do a bit of an online search in terms of like how to beef up, your academic section. As I mentioned, think about, awards to put in, think about achievements in terms of like any DIN lists or festivals or school festivals that you've like, won, maybe notable coursework. So that would be my advice. And then check as well with your career center. Your career center has like, if you all are still in university, your career center has really great resources for that too. So don't hesitate if you're a little bit confused to go to the career center and tell them like, hey, can you show me an example I have for sure in my participants. I won't be able to pull it out right now in the amount of time that we have left. But definitely check in with your career center or check in online for those types of examples. Sorry, Ina, that was not really a great answer for me, but yeah. So Charlie's asking like, okay, so Charlie's saying like, hey, sorry, I got in late. So yes, so is this meeting recorded? And will it be uploaded anywhere? So yes, this meeting is recorded. This workshop is recorded, and what we'll do is we'll send you afterwards via email. We'll send you the recording, so you all can have it and kind of rewatch it for those who attended. Hope that helps, Charlie. So I've got Anna, who's asking, should you put the education in chronological order, or in order of how major the degree is, master, bachelor, certificate? And with work experience, should it be chronological order or in order of the relevance of the job to what you're applying for, from more or less to relevant? That's a really great question. So let me stop there first, because I saw you have another one. So everything needs to be in reverse chronological order, okay? Ideally, sorry, I will say it again. For the work experience, everything needs to be in reverse chronological order, meaning the latest experience at the top and the oldest experience at the bottom, okay? Whether it's relevant or not, ideally you curate your resume so that everything looks a little bit relevant, and it should be the first thing, the first thing that you've done recently at the top. If you're really worried about the fact that the recent thing that you've done at the top is super irrelevant, you can also have two sections in your, I've seen that before. You can also have two sections, one that says relevant work experience, and you start with that, and other experience, and you start with all your non-relevant. So you could also break it down if needed, but always start with the latest. For your education, of course, master's first, bachelor second, certificate after. So you put it for education is like order of like import, also I guess the most recent first, but order of relevance. So obviously a master's is more important, or a bachelor is more important than a certification, but you should put your certification too. If you've done like a certification online about HubSpot marketing or things like that, those are great things to add. So that's for you, Anna. And then you did ask also, would you recommend these tips for job applications addressed to people who aren't recruiter? How should you address a cover letter to an unknown recruiter? That's a great question. So all of these tips that I'm providing, I think that they're equally relevant for like a direct job application to a recruiter, or even just a cold application on a website. Like if you like the company and they say like, hey, if you're interested in working with us, contact us at info@, and you can contact them. So I think to address, how to address a cover letter to an unknown recruiter, I would be like, for example, if I'm applying to this agency called Mojo Supermarket, I would be like, hey, Mojo Supermarket team, or something like that. So you can address them as a team. Other thing that you could do is research on LinkedIn. Who's the recruiter at Mojo Supermarket, for example? And like, I would be like, hey, like, hey, I don't know, like, hey, Kendra, or, you could put like in parentheses, or to whom it may concern. That's also okay. But you can address the team basically, and the name of the company and the team. So I would do that if you don't know who that is. Anna, let me know if I answered your question, okay? So Udita is asking, I want to add extracurricular activities and volunteer work. Do you think work from 2020 or 2023 would be relevant? Great question. Udita, if it's work that's done in high school, forget it. Ideally, I don't know where you at. If you're at a master level and 2020 was like you were in your bachelor's, then maybe just try to keep it like, just try to not include stuff that's like high school stuff. Just like at this stage, by the way, don't add your high school obviously in the education section. Like now you're like, university level. So I would say, unless it's extremely relevant, maybe you did something in high school that was like super relevant and quite incredible, maybe you can add it. But I would say keep it to your university years and above, ideally. That would be my 2 cents. Rachel is asking, if my previous work experience was consulting and digital marketing, my education background was in business analysis, will I be eligible to apply for any advertising related internships? I'm based in Sydney at the moment. For sure, Rachel. Your experience in consulting and digital marketing is absolutely great and super relevant for advertising. Business analysis as a background in education is very general and great in a really great way, right? Because you're learning really skills that are transferable. So don't let, I think, just to open up your question, Rachel, because I think a lot of people have that question as well. Don't let your background pinpoint you and like narrow you down. Your background, even if it's not sometimes completely relevant, can be all transformed and somehow written in a way that's going to make it feel relevant. Okay. And the fact that you're coming in from something that's not exactly an advertising major is a plus. It's not a minus. It means that you have other types of skill sets, that you're thinking in another way, and people value that. So don't let that stop you. And I think, yes, so to answer your question, Rachel, definitely you would be really, you would be eligible for sure for advertising related internships, at least in my opinion. So, okay, Ning, perfect. So Max is asking for art direction slash agency internships. How many interns from your program do large agencies such as Saatchi and Saatchi, TBWA take per cycle? So that's a good question, Max. So I think for our program, just to kind of answer, you know, a lot, we do have a couple like the bigger ones, but I will say, of course, the bigger ones, as any of them, are always the most competitive, right? So sometimes we get, you know, 2, 3 students like for the summer in like those bigger agencies, right? When, you know, when we're lucky, because those bigger agencies also get thousands of applications. But I will say for the rest, a lot of them are going into like mid-size or boutique agencies, which is great when, specifically when you're starting. A lot of the big ad agencies, they won't say it officially, but a lot of them will look to see if you have previous agency experience, because they value that. So starting with a boutique firm is actually quite cool, because in a boutique firm, you're getting a lot of exposure, you know, that you wouldn't necessarily. I started at TBWA, and no offense to TBWA, they're our partners as well in Hong Kong. We worked with them for many years in Hong Kong as well. It was amazing, but I did the same thing over and over for 6 months for my internship. It was like quite narrow, of course, because there was a lot of interns. So, you know, every intern had like a very specific kind of like, you know, set of tasks, versus sometimes in boutique firms, you're getting exposure to a lot of things because, you know, it's smaller and you're able to like, you know, be a lot more broad. So I think that, you know, a lot of our participants end up going in boutique and mid-size, which honestly is great, because, you know, a lot of them like utilize that to step up afterwards if they want to work for the big agencies, because not everybody wants to work for big corporations either. So that's just my answer to you, Max. Okay, so I have Hridika, who's saying, should there be a separate section for industry experiences and other extracurricular activities within university, relevant high school work, volunteer work? Yes, so you should have like, you should always have, you know, in your sections, you can have the work experience, and then you can have other experience or volunteering experience. You can have a subsection for that, for sure. And as I mentioned, high school work, ditch it, you all, ditch it. We don't want it. We don't want to see it. Okay. So yes, you can definitely separate. You can put them like all the work experience, and then I don't like to call it extracurricular as much. I like to probably call it more volunteering experience or other experience. Extracurricular feels too student-y on a resume, but you can definitely separate them. So I hope that helps. Okay, so we've got some questions from UNC about the credit barcode. I think that's probably responded in the chat. So Ning is asking, hey, Laura, I have another question. Good. What advice would you give students, creative writers, regarding disclosing that they are autistic in their resumes? I wouldn't disclose, you know, that's my advice, Ning. I wouldn't disclose anything. You don't have to. So I wouldn't. And I think not at any point in the recruitment process do you have to disclose it. I think if you want to disclose it, that's no problem. Like that's totally your choice and 100% respectable. But you don't have to. Okay. So it's really like on your own decision whether this is something that you want to put forward. It can also be, of course, a strength as well, right? And is this something that you want to put forward, or is this something that you feel like, okay, you know, I you know, because I don't have to disclose it, I'm not going to disclose it. Employers are not allowed to be making decisions or discriminating at all based on those, you know, criteria. So, you know, that's something that's been put in place in order to protect. So, you know, that's my 2 cents. But of course, again, only my humble opinion and my advice, right? Hope that helps, Ning. So I've got Diksha who's asking, hey Laura, I'm studying in Sydney, Australia. I recently completed a 4-week pioneer internship in Jakarta. Hey, because I'm in Jakarta right now. I worked with Vision Pictures at MNC. It's interesting to know that you're currently there. My question would be, how much should we expand upon an experience in a resume? For instance, I learned so much through my overseas internship in Jakarta. How much of it should I mention in the resume? That's a really good question. So I think for each experience in your resume, you should have approximately 2 to 4 bullet points, ideally. Now, if you have, for example, an experience that is recent, that is really, really significant compared to the rest, you could go maybe up to 5 or 6 bullet points, but I wouldn't go beyond that. And I would make sure that each bullet point treats of a different task and responsibility. Like make sure that you're not repeating the same. And don't say like, don't say like, Dishka, don't say like, oh, learned a lot about cultural experiences in Jakarta. Like that's not really a task or responsibility. So really focus it and narrow it down on things that you've actually, done. So I think four bullet point is a great place to be. So we've got 2 more minutes together. I'm scrolling through. So Rachel is say, let's see here. In that case, can I apply for the ArtBound Initiative program too? I think Rachel, was it you who had the question about? Let me see. Yes, Rachel, you can apply for the ArtBound Initiative program. Yes, you would be eligible. Contact our team to make sure. Of course, I don't want to give you like fake answers. So do contact us and ask us exactly like give us all the details and we can let you know for sure. Charles is asking, would middle school experience be relevant? No, Charles, no middle school experience, no high school experience. Keep it university level only. And then let me take one last question. So Manisha is asking, what tips would you recommend while crafting the CV for someone who has no experience in contemporary art and switched majors from architecture to fine arts background? And then are there internships opportunities at ArtBound Initiative based on fine arts background? So yes, we have a lot of opportunities in fine arts. So that's definitely something you can contact us about. And Manisha, again, same thing that I said for Rachel in some ways. Utilize your non-relevant experience to make it, again, relatable to the arts. If you've studied architecture, you've learned a lot of incredible skills. You've learned probably project management as well, which is really important in the arts. You've learned communications with a lot of stakeholders. Utilize that and then see if there's any volunteering experience that you can do in the meantime. Student clubs that you could join that are more art focused. Is there a gallery in your university that you could potentially get involved with? Like try to see what the little things that you could do to try to kind of like add a couple things, but otherwise like you can work on a strategy to make it relatable. Okay, so you all, I'm so sorry, like there's so many other great questions that I don't have the time to kind of go with, but I'm conscious of the time. I know that for some of you in the US it's quite late as well, so I appreciate you all for coming through, and please join our next events. I think probably our team put the link in the chat. So we have next events with portfolios and recruitment. I hope this was helpful today, and again, this is, again, my opinion. You all take what you want to get from it, but I hope that some of those tips were helpful, okay? Thanks, everybody, so much. Bye, everyone. Thanks. Bye, Imogen. See you. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.